I fought against white domination and I fought against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons can live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. It is also an ideal for which I am prepared to die. These brave words were uttered by Nelson Mandela, a humble man and activist that spent his whole life trying to end the national government's strict laws and their ways of ruling in South Africa and fight against their system of apartheid. The time that Mandela lived in South Africa was a very difficult one. Apartheid was set up after the Population Registration Act of 1948. The country was highly segregated in every possible way through these very strict laws. Nelson Mandela has been a leader in the movement in South Africa for over 40 years. He's been a source of inspiration to the oppressed blacks in his country, and he gave them courage to fight with him and to end this horrible system. He was even imprisoned for simply standing up for what he believes in and defying apartheid in South Africa's strict government. Many factors contributed to Mandela's drive to bring justice to his people and his country. Mandela was motivated to fight and make a difference due to good examples early on in his life, his great leadership ability, and overcoming adversity and hardship, and displaying great determination to fight for what he believes in. Mandela had many good examples early on in his life that would later transform him into a great leader and to be able to fight for what he believes in. Nelson's own tribe had been in their own fight for freedom and showed great bravery, and Nelson had heard the stories of their fight that occurred hundreds of years before he was born. He was fascinated with these stories and took them to heart, and they inspired him to continue their legacy and one day fight for his country and continue their act of bravery and fighting for what they believe in. When Mandela was just a boy and his father was dying, he tried to plan out his son's future, and he noticed that Mandela used a certain way to speak to his younger siblings and his friends, and he remarked that these qualities he displayed would lead him to one day become a great leader himself and lead his nation, and his father was right. His father also arranged for Mandela to live in the chief's grand palace after his death, where Mandela would later observe many trials, and he learned all the processes that went along with those trials that would later help him in his speaking and influence him to become a lawyer and campaign against apartheid. Mandela's great exhibition of leadership throughout his life also played a huge part in the movement for his freedom in South Africa. One way Mandela showed leadership was through his involvement with the ANC and the ANCYL. Mandela started to regularly attend the meetings in the ANC, and their main goal was just to simply end segregation, of course, but many of their efforts went largely unnoticed. They didn't really make much a difference, and the government didn't take them seriously. So Mandela and some other young political activists decided to step up and sort of form another branch of the ANC, which was the ANC Youth League. He was first elected secretary of this league and later went on to become president because of his great leadership skills, and he was able to step up and take some action in this group. The ANC launched its campaign for defense against unjust laws in 1952. They also advocated the weapons of boycott, strike, civil disobedience, and non-cooperation, and that was accepted as the ANC's policy. And with Mandela's leadership, they took many actions such as these to fight against the strict government. Another display of this determined leader was his decision to halt the motion of peaceful resistance and launch a campaign of economic sabotage, despite the consequences that would occur. Tension had been growing due to the banishment of the ANC and the Sharpeville massacre, which killed 69 black people. Mandela just decided that enough was enough. The peaceful resistance obviously wasn't working, and it was his ability to realize this and to be able to take action and transform his plan of action into launching a campaign of economic sabotage. Mandela knew that he had stood idly by for too long and, enough was enough. So Mandela went underground, but he was tried for sabotage. And at his trial, he didn't use his stand to try to get out of his sentencing or defend himself, but he used his place in the stand to be able to speak to the people and tell him what he believed in and his beliefs of freedom, democracy, and equality. So Mandela did go into prison, and after his prison release, he went on to become president. So due to his work and his movement, all races in South Africa were finally able to vote for the first time. And not surprisingly, he was overwhelmingly elected to be the first president of this newly democratic society. His charisma and leadership ability obviously influenced the people to want to choose him to be their leader and elect him. And during the course of his presidency, he continued to display his leadership, and he was able to set into play a wide range of progressive social reforms. So through his leadership, he helped put an end to apartheid and lead South Africa to democracy, and he was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. Another reason Mandela was able to achieve so much in his life was because of his determination and not letting anything stand in the way of his goals. Despite the constant opposition from the National Party and the killings and brutality of the protesters and other citizens, he still continued to fight for what he believed in. He didn't let anything stand in his way. Even after being in prison for 27 years, he still continued his work and was determined to see this through. He was first arrested for illegal exit from the country and incitement to strike. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. And soon after that, he and 10 others were convicted and charged with sabotage. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964. But he didn't let that stop him. He was released after 27 years and just plunged into his work, picked up right where he left off as if nothing had happened. It's amazing that although he had to stop his work for so long and step back from the picture, he was not bitter about his imprisonment, and he wasn't discouraged after everything that had been thrown at him. He simply just picked up his work and continued right where he left off. He was so determined to see his goals through. It showed how much he really cared for his country, his determination and strength and strong beliefs exhibited by continuing his fight for freedom after being in prison for 27 years. So, Mandela demonstrated great leadership for his people, and his drive and determination motivated the people around him to join in the fight. And because of his leadership and determination and all these people coming together, they put an end to the strict national government and the horrible system of apartheid. Thanks to the early motivation from his ancestors, his natural leadership ability, and his ability to still fight for what he believes in despite being knocked down, his goals were achieved and he was able to see them finally come true.